Salutations, everybody. It's IXLJ, the OG, and welcome back to Back in the Day. Now, here on Back in the Day, we'd like to take a look back at the rich history of World Championship Wrestling by taking a look at some of the greatest rivalries, matches, merchandise, and so much more. And as always, we like to kick it off with our top story of the week. And for this week's story, we're going all the way back to September 22nd, 1997, for that fateful day where we would see the debut of one of WCW's biggest stars during the Monday Night Wars, the debut of one Bill Goldberg. So as we all know, Bill Goldberg was a former NFL player. He played for the Atlanta Falcons. However, he did suffer an injury that would be career-ending. Now, after his NFL career, he would go on to get into bodybuilding as well as mixed martial arts. And while working out at a gym, it was Lex Luger and Sting who found Bill Goldberg and encouraged him to get into the world of professional wrestling. You gotta keep in mind, Bill Goldberg, before his career in WCW, he never even thought about getting into the world of professional wrestling. He was never really a big fan or anything like that. With Goldberg's football career over, he decided to give this wrestling thing a try and would go to the world-famous Power Plant, where he would train under the tutelage of one Sergeant Buddy Lee Parker. Now, Bill Goldberg would actually debut under the name of Bill Gold and would wrestle a complete amount of 6 dark matches before he would make his television debut. Now, his first match, he would wrestle his trainer, Sergeant Buddy Lee Parker, on a dark match before a June episode of Monday Night Nitro. He would also face enhancement talents such as Buddy Landel, Chip Minton, John Betcha, and believe it or not, he would actually lose one of these matches to a wrestler called Chad Fortune. Now, the other wrestler that he wrestled out of these 6 was one Hugh Morris. And as we all know, Bill Goldberg would make his debut on Monday Night Nitro on September 22nd of 1997 against the Laughing Man himself. But Hugh Morris is a phenomenal wrestler, and the man should get a ton of credit. I mean, say what you will about Bill DeMott, the trainer or whatever, that controversy the years later that would follow him. Still, Hugh Morris was a hell of an in-ring talent and was a perfect foil for Bill Goldberg to debut against. Now, of course, when Goldberg came out, it was like no thrills. It was just black boots, black tights, no real music. I mean, he just came out and like pretty much manhandled Hugh Morris in about 3 or 4 minutes, essentially. And it was very impressive to see him just the way he would dominate such an established star in World Championship Wrestling. And I'll never forget watching this as a kid and, you know, having Mean Gene Okerlund kind of come over to him, try to talk to Goldberg, and he pretty much wouldn't say a damn thing. Now, interesting enough, it was one Mike Tenay who came up with the idea of Goldberg's legendary streak, where he would just run roughshod throughout World Championship Wrestling, and they would continue to keep track of his record. And within a year's time frame, Bill Goldberg would become one of the most popular wrestlers in World Championship Wrestling. Of course, he'd go on to win the United States title from Raven, and a couple months later, he would defeat Hollywood Hulk Hogan for the World Heavyweight Championship in the Georgia Dome on an episode of WCW Monday Nitro. And of course, like the saying goes, all good things must come to an end. As we all know, Bill Goldberg's undefeated streak would end at Starrcade 1998 when he would go down to Kevin Nash. But his final record up until that time frame, he would be at a total of 173 wins. Love him or hate him, you can't deny that Bill Goldberg was one of the biggest stars in World Championship Wrestling history, especially during arguably the biggest boom in professional wrestling during the Monday Night Wars. And because of that, Bill Goldberg's debut in WCW is our top story of the week here on Back in the Day. Now, here on Back in the Day, we'd always like to take a look back at some of the great matches throughout the history of World Championship Wrestling. And today, we're going to take a look at a match that I would consider is definitely a hidden gem of a matchup. We're going to go all the way back to 1996 to the Great American Bash. And we're going to talk about the matchup between Sting and Lord Steven Regal. Now, throughout the mid-90s, Steven Regal was arguably one of the best in-ring workers in World Championship Wrestling. And he had some phenomenal rivalries and in-ring matches throughout this time frame. In 1995, he'd be put into a tag team with Bobby Eaton, or the Earl of Eaton, and they formed the Blue Bloods tag team. But it seemed like whatever they did with Steven Regal in WCW, he would always hit a home run. Now, at this time frame in 1996, they really weren't using Regal a whole heck of a lot, but interestingly enough, they decided to put him into a rivalry with arguably WCW's biggest babyface, Sting. And I also kind of wonder, too, if this was something kind of Sting was really wanting to work with Regal. And it's just a damn shame that these two guys never worked together, like, during the height of, like, Sting's popularity. Surfer Sting, I'm talking about, because I think Regal would have been an excellent foil during that time frame. So the build-up to this match was pretty much like Regal not respecting Sting and them seeking out respect from one another, essentially. And they would build this up over several weeks on television, and the match would culminate at the Great American Bash in 1996, where these two would meet in a technical masterpiece. And I mean, let's face facts, Regal is a tough son of a gun, and he really was able to put a hurting on Sting, and Sting was able to keep up with Regal pace throughout this matchup. Some great in-ring mat work, as you can expect in any Regal matchup. However, at the end of the day, the Stinger would pull out the win and thus earn the respect of one Lord Steven Regal. Now, unfortunately, at the time frame this match took place, we were just starting with getting the NWO introduced into World Championship Wrestling. Otherwise, this could have been a program that went on for a couple months thereafter. But man, oh man, don't sleep on this matchup from the Great American Bash 1996. It's an incredible bout. And it's our match of the week here on Back in the Day. And here on Back in the Day, we like to take a look back at some of the greatest rivalries throughout the history of World Championship Wrestling. And today, we're going to highlight a rivalry that really kind of goes under the radar. But man, oh man, when you say these two names are synonymous with great in-ring wrestling. And I'm talking about the rivalry between Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Stunning Steve Austin. Now, Stunning Steve and Ricky Steamboat's path has crossed before in the early 90s, more so 1992, when Stunning Steve was a part of the Dangerous Alliance, and Ricky Steamboat was part of a stable of good guys, pretty much with Sting and Barry Windham, Nikita Koloff, Dustin Rhodes, just to name a few. And they would often be mixed together in like tag team matches and whatnot, and would meet on television a couple times too. But man, the in-ring chemistry was definitely there between these two. Now, you fast forward about a year later, and of course, in 1993, you have the Hollywood Blondes, Brian Pillman and Stunning Steve Austin, who are arguably one of the greatest tag teams in WCW history. When the Hollywood Blondes won their first tag team titles, it was from none other than Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and his tag team partner Shane Douglas. And these four had some incredible matches throughout 1993, ultimately culminating in a steel cage matchup at Slamboree of that year. Now, Steve Austin, after leaving Brian Pillman, would go on to win the United States Heavyweight Championship and would hold it throughout the majority of 1994, being managed by one Colonel Robert Parker. And Stunning Steve would have some incredible encounters throughout 1994, but in the summer of 94, arguably he had his best series of matches against one Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. And like I say, Steamboat and Austin were very familiar with each other at this point. The two would go on to have a matchup at Bash at the Beach 1994 for the United States Heavyweight Championship. And at Bash at the Beach, they really stole the show and put on a technical masterpiece between the Dragon and Stunning Steve. Now, ultimately, Steve Austin would win to retain his United States Championship. But this match literally did steal the show, and we're talking about a huge show. Maybe the biggest show for WCW to date at this point. This would be the show where Hulk Hogan debuted in World Championship Wrestling. But that would not be the end of the rivalry, as they would continue to feud for the next couple of months over the United States Championship. It would be the Dragon chasing Stunning Steve and coming ever so close to winning that United States title. On August 24th of 1994, Steamboat would challenge Stunning Steve once again for the United States Championship at Clash of the Champions 28 in a no disqualification match. Because you gotta keep in mind, Stunning Steve would do just about everything to keep his championship and was disqualified on multiple occasions against the Dragon. And thus, the no disqualification rule was introduced. And at the Clash of the Champions 28, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat would finally dethrone Stunning Steve Austin and once again become the United States Heavyweight Champion. Now, unfortunately, shortly after this matchup, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat would suffer a career-ending injury, and this would be his last televised matchup in World Championship Wrestling, would be at the Clash of the Champions. But he did go out as the United States Heavyweight Champion. Even though Steamboat did have to retire, still the rivalry wasn't done just yet, as they were booked for a match at WCW Fall Brawl 1994. And I'll never forget too, like, Stunning Steve Austin always coming out during this time frame in this feud and have the words Dragon Slayer on the back of his trunks, man. Classic. Now, Ricky Steamboat would come out at Fall Brawl to pretty much relinquish the United States Championship. And Stunning Steve, knowing that he would now become the United States Champion, or would he? WCW Commissioner at the time, Nick Bockwinkel, would come out and decree that the United States Championship was in fact being stripped from Ricky the Dragon the Steamboat. And yes, Steve Austin would win the United States title once again. However, Ricky Steamboat would inform him that he would have to defend that United States Championship that night against a debuting Hacksaw Jim Duggan. And ultimately, Hacksaw Jim Duggan would just come in and destroy Stunning Steve Austin and beat him in 35 seconds. And I love Hacksaw, but honestly, I think this is like really what was the end of Steve Austin's run in World Championship Wrestling. Because really, they didn't do anything with him after that. And he would suffer an injury. Of course, we all know how it would play out for one Steve Austin. But nonetheless, this was a tremendous rivalry and a great set of matches. And you should definitely go back and look back on these matches that Stunning Steve Austin and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat had in 1994. And thus it's making it our rivalry of the week here on Back in the Day. Now, if you follow me on TikTok and social media, you know I'm a huge collector of wrestling magazines. So here on Back in the Day, I always like to take a look back at some of the great magazines throughout the years of World Championship Wrestling. And for today's magazine, we're going to take a look at the Wrestler from November of 1990. And on the cover, we're talking about the rivalry between Sting and Lex Luger. And there you see it. That title belt should be around my waist, Stinger, but Lex is my friend. He'll watch out for me. Let's take a look. Of course, I remember this was a staple of the early 90s. Do you know your wrestling trivia with Captain Lou Albano and Bruno Sammartino? Here's an interesting story. Bruno would actually work a couple years later in World Championship Wrestling in 1992. As also, he was a special referee in 1989 at WCW Halloween Havoc. There we go. What's happening? Look at this young Lex Luger. Look, the U.S. champion, he was attacked by those damn Four Horsemen. Sending the total package a message. Oh, and here we go. No Holds Barred. It's talking about Ric Flair's future in the NWA and WCW. Says he's going to stay there and become a 7-time world champion rather than go to the WWF. Well, about a year later, that story would change. Oh man, we better send in for some wrestling tapes. Check it out. We can get the Great American Bash 1988 only for $39.95. Bash 89, Wrestle War 89, Starrcade 87, Chi-Town Heat, and of course we gotta get Starrcade 86, the Night of the Skywalkers. Send all your money to TV Sports Video in Greenwich, Connecticut. How ironic is it this place was in Greenwich, Connecticut? I'm just saying. Thumbs up and thumbs down section. Thumbs up to Sting. Oh, a 21-pin salute to the new NWA World Champion. Because remember, the Stinger had won the title at the Great American Bash that year. But a thumbs up to Jim Herd? Real? I think one Ric Flair would disagree with that, but I'm just saying. Of course, the wrestler part of PWI. You know you gotta get some of that sweet PWI merch, baby. Including the Sky Flyer, aka it's a Frisbee. Our cover story, Luger and Sting rivalry ready to explode again! Oh, look at the total package. Look at the Stinger. Now keep in mind too, Sting was originally slated to win the World Heavyweight Championship in early 1990. However, he did get injured, but Lex Luger would fill that void. And really, it helped kind of add to the rivalry between these two that would take place pretty much a year later. Check this out. Rick and Scott Steiner agree the Southern Boys are our favorite tag team. The Southern Boys was really kind of an underrated tag team, and when you look back in the history of World Championship Wrestling, of course, Tracy Smothers and Steve Armstrong. Look at these young men ready to wrestle around and break little girls' hearts all over the place. And check this out. Looking back from September 1982, look at this young Road Warrior animal. What is he wearing here? Man, look at them thighs. Damn, boy, you be thick. Look at the shorty shorts on Road Warrior Animal, man. And you talk about random, look at this spread of workout videos you can get and send into. Yes, $29.95 for the Dolph Lundgren Maximum Potential workout video. Just take my money now, because I must break you. And of course, we got to take a look at the wrestlers' top 10. And in the world of World Championship Wrestling / NWA, at the time, Stinger was at number 2, followed by Lex Luger at number 3. If you look on down here, you can see Arn Anderson, the current TV champion at the time, came in at number 8. And over on the tag team side of things, the NWA World Tag Champs at the time, Doom, were ranked number 1, followed by the Rock and Roll Express. Look at number 4 was the Midnight Express, the current U.S. Tag Champs at the time. Of course, the Steiner Brothers, who were the number 2 contenders to the NWA Tag titles at the time. And there you got the Southern Boys, the number 1 contenders to the U.S. Tag titles at the time as well. You can see this tag team list was loaded with NWA WCW talent. Let's take a closer look at the top 10 in the National Wrestling Alliance, aka WCW. Of course, Sting was your world champion. Number 1, Lex Luger, the U.S. champ at the time. Ric Flair coming in at number 2. Look at number 3 there, folks. Mark Callis. If you know, you know. Arn Anderson coming in at number 4. Number 5 is the Junkyard Dog. Number 6, Paul Mr. Wonderful Orndorff. 7, Barry Windham. 8, Sid Vicious, Mike Rotunda. 9, and rounding out the top 10 is one Tommy Wildfire Rich. And check out the ad on the back here of the wrestler. If you thought this summer was hot, wait till the fall. It's going to be a scorcher. It's Fall Brawl. So the very first Fall Brawl was actually a Clash of the Champions, believe it or not. It's Clash of the Champions 12. Of course, you knew it would be on TBS at 8:05 p.m. And the wrestler from November of 1990 is our magazine of the week here, Back in the Day. And as always, we like to take a look back at some of that sweet, sweet merch here throughout the history of World Championship Wrestling. And I gotta tell you, today's merch we're going to be looking at is something I hold near and dear to my heart. I want to take a look back at WCW trading cards from 1991. Now, these trading cards was put out by a company called Impel, which I gotta be honest, I don't know a whole lot about them. I don't know if they did other trading cards and other sports or other things, but trading cards in the 90s were the thing. I mean, they had trading cards for just about everything. Everything from, of course, baseball and football and basketball, to movies, to TV shows, to rock stars. Hell, there were even cards for Desert Storm, for crying out loud. And of course, you knew World Championship Wrestling would have to get into that craze. And these cards were very of the 90s. I mean, look at all these bright colors, man. You're hitting them with the red, with the yellow, with the green. I mean, if this doesn't encapsulate the early 90s, I don't know what will. Now, there was over 150 cards in this set, and you had everything from your singles wrestlers. Of course, they focused a lot on their top singles wrestlers, where you'd have wrestlers like Sting and Lex Luger and Ric Flair that would have, you know, like a dozen different trading cards in this set. And you'd also have some of your popular, like, mid-card talent as well, such as Flying Brian Pillman, El Gigante, Now, also, you would have tag teams would have their own cards in this set as well. Of course, most popular being the Steiner Brothers, as well as Doom, along with the Southern Boys and the Fabulous Freebirds. And even the announcers and managers would have cards in this set too, like Teddy Long, Missy Hyatt, and Jim Ross himself would even have some trading cards in this set. I'll never forget too, as a kid, I found like a box of these pretty much at a KB Toys, like on clearance, and I just was like, I gotta have it. Of course, when I got this was years after this time frame, so like later on in the mid-90s. That's why they were so cheap. But I literally pretty much had the entire set of these trading cards. And you can still get them for a pretty affordable price, especially considering today's pricing standards for trading cards. Hell, you can get a box of these on eBay unopened for like about $60 now if you want. But man, oh man, these trading cards hold a very special spot in my heart as I grew up on them, man. We had to make it our merch of the week here on Back in the Day. Now let's go wrap it up for this episode. But if you like some of the amazing content shows you're seeing here on World Championship Wreckage, just go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button because there's so many incredible shows here. If you like the content you see here on World Championship Wreckage's YouTube channel, then why don't you head on over to Cole TV, where we have a plethora of awesome shows, including some weekly wrestling podcasts, such as Pro Wrestling 60, where we cover everything that happens in the world of pro wrestling, as well as learning the ropes, a ton of different vlog specials, prediction shows, and so much more. Join the revolution that is Cole TV. Well, once again, I'm XLJ the OG, and I want to thank you so much for watching this episode of Back in the Day.